I mean, out of all the things I've had to give up in my life, I think alcohol was the hardest because, like I say, it is socially acceptable. It's such a part of like mainstream culture. Everyone thinks that if you go out, you have even if you go out for a meal, you have to have a glass of wine with your meal. It's just that's what everyone does. So it is a lot harder, and it is. I'd say it is a daily battle. But not so much. I've got to a point now where it's not so much daily battles. I don't think about drinking on a daily basis. So when you're in active addiction, the problem you have is when you start drinking, it sets off a craving that you can't stop, and you go out of control and you cause problems. Then the second problem is that you have an obsession to drink that doesn't go away. So no matter what the consequences were the last time, the obsession's there, and you think, I need to have a drink. And in recovery, that obsession is, at the start, the obsession is still there. As the years have gone on, that obsession to drink leaves. So now I don't think about drinking. So the stuff that is a daily battle, for me, I always say to people that like a relapse isn't when you pick up the drink. A relapse starts months before, when you slip back into old behaviour. So in AA, they call it behaving within your character defects. So your negative characteristics. So jealousy, envy, rage, or dishonesty, all those kind of things. So if I start behaving like that, I have to think about it and go, right, why am I doing this? What's my motives? And I have to check that behavior and wind it back in and stop behaving that way, because if I behave in those ways now, I can't mask how I feel with the drink. And that's where it could lead me to if I'm behaving that way. Does that make sense?
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have an author joining me from across the pond, fresh from a nap. He's joining me after a night of dancing. Hello, let's do that. He's joining me today to talk about his book. And Stewart Lee is here with me. We're going to be talking about Me and My Addiction. His book looks amazing. Great topic. Stewart, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Good to be here.
Excellent. So tell me a little bit about where you are, Stewart, in this big world of ours.
Where I am right now?
Yeah.
So I'm a recovered. Some people will say recovered. I always say recovering. So I don't think I ever fully, truly recover from a disease of addiction. So that's my background. I've been an addict. I was in active addiction for the most of my adult life. But this year I'm celebrating 10 years of recovery. And I celebrated that 10 years with publishing a book about my journey through addiction to try and help other people who are suffering to understand, get a bit of hope that they can change their life also. And it was written in a way that also educates people who aren't suffering with addiction, so that, addiction touches many, many people, not just the sufferers, but also the family members and friends and stuff. So I tried to write it in a way that it educates those people too, so they can kind of understand a bit better of how they can help their friends or loved ones in a better way. So that's where we are. We published the book. Sales are going well so far. I'm trying to reach as many people as I can, talking to people across the world, such as yourself, to try and reach out and help as many people as we can. That's the plan.
Nice. So let's go back, Stewart, in time. Where do you have like a moment in time where you can kind of pinpoint and you could see the beginning of your journey into addiction? Like, was there something that happened when you were younger, or where does the path kind of start for this for you?
A lot of people have a conception that addiction begins with a moment, something that happens, a trauma, or and in a lot of cases that's true. A lot of people do have something that sort of triggers it, and I believe I'm someone who was just born with the addiction trait in me. I was fascinated with alcohol way before I even picked up a drink. I can remember when I was I think I was about 10, 11 years old at the time, and my parents were talking about running their local pub, and we would have to live above that pub if that happened. And I was super, super excited about the thought of living above a pub. It just fascinated me from a young age. And I think I was behaving in an addictive way before I even thought of alcohol. So, things like I wanted the sweets all the time. I wanted the TV all the time. I wanted to be popular. I always wanted more, even as a child. So the addictive things were already in there. My parents are both big drinkers. A lot of my family are big drinkers. So there are studies that say that addiction can be hereditary. So if it's in the family already, you're more likely to suffer with it. So yeah, there was no major trauma that I can look at and go, it's because of this. I think it's just, I was just dealt that hand, you know.
So when did you start drinking then as a young person?
People talk of, like, in recovery, people talk about, do you remember your first drink? I don't remember my first drink. I remember the story of my first drink because I was only 5 years old. It was kind of an accident.
Yeah.
My parents were having a leaving party. We were leaving an area of England called Coventry and moving to the southwest. And in the leaving party, I found there was a drinks table in the kitchen, and I was in there and I just picked up a bottle and started drinking it. And I picked up the bottle that had a picture of a bird on it. And in the UK, that was woodpecker cider. I didn't know what it was, so I just started drinking it, and I carried on drinking it, and I ended up drunk under the table at 5 years old.
5. Wow.
Yeah. No one's fault. It was just
there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Accident happens. But like that didn't. I mean, I don't mean that set off the addiction. Then, like, I wasn't saying, "Mum, give me whiskey," like every night.
Yeah.
But so I mean, it's not a big deal. It's a story in my life, but it's not a big deal. It's not where my addiction began. I think it was probably teenage years where it like really started to become apparent. I was very shy, insecure, didn't feel like I fitted in with the world, desperate to be popular, to have friend groups. And when I discovered people who, it started off with smoking cigarettes. I thought I was cool by smoking cigarettes and fitted in with those people. And then slowly that progressed on to drinking. Friends from school would meet on a Friday night down on the river, drinking bottles of cider. And I kind of got, for the first time in my teenage years, I found something I was really good at, and I kind of got recognition for it. So everyone's like, "Oh, don't try and outdrink Stewart. He's the master at drinking." In their mind, I was, because I could drink more than everyone else, but I would still drink too much. So that's when it kind of really started taking hold of me in the teenage years, when I was like trying to fit in with all my peer groups, and it started getting. I think it was out of control before I was even old enough to drink alcohol. Like, the legal limit over here is 18.
Yeah.
And I was drinking alcoholically at 13.
Wow. So your family and friends, were they aware of the path that you were on during that time, or was it well hidden from them?
I think, like, in over here, like, alcohol is so socially acceptable. Like, I don't think my parents didn't really know how bad it was going to be. But there was kind of like a culture back in the 90s where, so like, my dad would go take me to the local pub to watch football with him, and he'd be having a pint, and he would say to the landlord, "Can I have a half for the boy?" And the landlord of the pub would say, "I'll sit him in the corner and out the way so no one sees him, and it's fine." There was that kind of culture where landlords didn't really care too much about kids drinking alcohol. So it wasn't like my parents encouraged it, but I think they felt that if they knew what I was doing, rather than me going off dinner with my friends, it'd be safer for me. So they kind of were aware, but I don't think they knew that it was something that was going to escalate to the level that it did. They were doing their best to try and keep me safe, I guess, and thinking that by allowing me to drink with them, at that age was going to be better for me than me drinking away from them and keeping it secret.
Yeah.
But then I just did both.
Wow. So, like, jump ahead for a second to like current time when you've gone through your addiction and you're in recovery and you're still working all the time. If alcohol is prevalent in culture, do you just hide in your home and you stay away from people? Like, if it's around you all the time, is it something that you're still battling on the regular basis?
I mean, out of all the things I've had to give up in my life, I think alcohol was the hardest because, like I say, it is socially acceptable. It's such a part of like mainstream culture. Everyone thinks that if you go out, you have, even if you go out for a meal, you have to have a glass of wine with your meal. It's just, that's what everyone does.
Yeah.
So it is a lot harder, and I'd say it is a daily battle. But not so much. I've got to a point now where it's not so much daily battle. So I don't think about drinking on a daily basis. So when you're in active addiction, the problem you have is when you start drinking, it sets off a craving that you can't stop.
Yeah.
And you go out of control and you cause problems. Then the second problem is that you have an obsession to drink that doesn't go away. So no matter what the consequences were the last time, the obsession's there and you think, I need to have a drink. And in recovery, that obsession is, at the start, the obsession is still there. As the years have gone on, that obsession to drink leaves. So now I don't think about drinking. So the stuff that is a daily battle, for me, I always say to people that like a relapse isn't when you pick up the drink. A relapse starts months before when you slip back into old behavior. So in AA, they call it behaving within your character defects. So your negative characteristics. So jealousy, envy, rage, or dishonesty, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
So if I start behaving like that, I have to think about it and go, right, why am I doing this? What's my motives? And
Right.
I have to check that behavior and wind it back in and stop behaving that way. Because if I behave in those ways now, I can't mask those, how I feel with the drink. And that's where it could lead me to if I'm behaving that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like, talk about like the people around you, like who drink socially, and it's for them, it doesn't seem to be an issue, and they're around you. When you come in the room, are they like, "Oh, Stewart's here," like, how are they reacting to you around you, knowing that you've had this journey?
When initially it was a bit like that, but I think now people know that it's like now that I'm sort of like 10 years sober, they don't kind of worry about it so much anymore.
Good.
Yeah, there's no getting away from it, I guess. I don't hide away from it either. Like I still love going out watching live bands and watching football with my dad in the pub. To have the atmosphere. Going out dancing, people have a drink when they're dancing. I was at the weekend of this weekend, and everyone they hire out a whole holiday camp, and there's people having chalet parties everywhere around you. It's everywhere. I don't hide from it because I just don't have that obsession to drink anymore. People that can drink normally and not have an issue with it, hats off to them. Like you crack on and you enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I don't have any desire to try to ever do that because I know for me it doesn't end that way. Yeah. So I don't.
Yeah.
One of the things you get in recovery is a lot of the questions people ask you is always, because you've been sober so long now and you haven't touched it and you're recovered, surely you could just have one now and you'd be okay. And my answer to that is, why would I want to? Why would I want to risk having one drink? Because for me, having one drink was never enjoyable. It had to be all or nothing.
Right. Yeah.
So why would I risk destroying everything that I've built up over the years to go and have one social drink? I'd rather have a lemonade.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because I know of a friend who he's either zero or he's all in, and when he's all in, he's gone too far. Like there's no middle ground with him. So if he goes to a wedding and there's an open bar, he's not walking out of the room when he's done, right? He's gonna one in each hand, right? Yeah. So and everyone kind of knows that, but it gets a little awkward for the people who know that's coming because he won't listen in that setting. Right. And yeah, I just wonder from someone who sees it happening, how we can help someone who is living in that to be a better ally or to be there to support them. Is it something we can do, or is it something we can't do as an observer outside?
It's very difficult because addiction is a disease that tells us we don't have it. So the whole time I'm in this denial of going, no, next time it'll be fine. Like I just won't drink the 8th one. And I'll be okay. And also it's a disease that you can only recover from when you've decided you've had enough, because you can't do it for anybody else. Like I've tried when a girlfriend, the mother of my children, said, "You're an alcoholic, you need to go and get help." I went to a few meetings and convinced myself I wasn't the same. So one of the things that I've learned over my years is when people come to me and say, they start talking about addiction and asking, you can tell when people are kind of curious because they're asking because they might think they've got a problem. And what I always try to do is I don't diagnose them and say, how do you behave? Do you do this? Do you do that? That's not the way to approach it. What I do is I explain to them how I thought, how I felt, things that I did. And then if they relate to the things that I'm talking about that I did, they think, oh yeah, I do that. Oh, I do that. Oh yeah, I might do that as well. That's when they can start making their own mind up and diagnose themselves. That's probably the key to try and get someone to diagnose themselves, because addiction is a disease that you can only diagnose yourself. There's no doctor that can say, yes, you've met this criteria, so you are an alcoholic. No definitive line that says that's it. Over that line, you are, underneath you're not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to diagnose yourself.
And that must be hard to do. Like, that seems like a moving target almost.
I always call it planting the seed. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to do with the book. Like, I've got a lot of my life experiences in the book, but the stories of my life that are in there are to verify what I'm saying in that chapter. So there's a chapter that says, is addiction environmental? So there's studies that say the environment you're brought up in is to do with whether you become an addict or not. So I use stories from my life to say whether I agree with that theory or not. And I'm hoping with the stories in there, that's what people who are on the edge of deciding they've got a problem or not can read the stories and relate to it. And if they relate to it, they can then maybe, if they want to, diagnose themselves and set themselves on a recovery journey. You know, and if people do diagnose themselves by reading my book and then later on decide, actually, no, I'm not an alcoholic, and go back to drinking, that's fine too. You know, alcohol's never going to disappear. They're not going to miss out on anything by trying it for a while, are they?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So was there a point in time where you knew you had crossed the line and you were in like a danger zone for yourself personally, where you're like, I gotta figure this out?
Yeah, definitely. So like my addiction, alcohol was always my go-to to start with. And then it escalated into drug addiction as well. So, what I found is that, like, mixing alcohol with cocaine, it's like you're having this mad cocktail. You start drinking till you get to the point where you start getting a little bit drunk. And if you feel a bit tipsy, sniff some cocaine, and then you're fine again. And you carry on drinking.
So it's like you got to a new level, and then you're starting from there, and you're going to the next level, right? Yeah.
Just keep going and going and going, and that plays havoc with your mental health, because like you're using alcohol, which is a depressant,
Yeah.
and then cocaine, which is an upper,
Yeah.
your mind just does not know which way it's going. It's up then down constantly. Anyway, back to the point. So yeah, I got into cocaine, and you know, over here that's probably that's one of the most expensive drugs that there is. So the only way I could really afford to be able to doing it the way I like to do it was to sell it on the side as well. So I was selling it to fund my own habit, and then getting myself into debt with people who were quite dangerous people. I got to a point where I thought, I was getting close encounters with the law as well, quite close to getting caught with quite a big amount. So at that point, I'm thinking to myself, this is leading to jail or death.
Yeah.
And that's quite a scary prospect, right?
So roughly how old were you when all that was going on?
26.
Wow.
That's going on, yeah.
You think about it, like 26 years of age. What could you have been doing with your life at 26? Like having fun, just being basically a big kid and just living life, and without all that stuff going on, how your path could have been so much different, right?
Yeah. I think the problem is what made it easier to just go down that path is from a young age, I lost all ambition. Like, I didn't have any dreams to do anything. Like, my only goal was to get smashed. So someone asked me, I did a Q&A on my Facebook group. And one of the questions someone asked me was like, what's your biggest regret? And the answer I gave was like, obviously, like, people expect you to say something to do with the drug use and that, but like, yeah, I do regret some of what I did, but it's made me the person I am now, and now I'm in a good position where I can help people. My biggest regret really was not getting on the property ladder when I was a youngster, because the house prices in the UK have skyrocketed and interest rates are at their all-time high. Trying to get on the mortgage trying to get a mortgage and get on the property ladder now is like near impossible. Like, if I hadn't have gone down the path I'd gone and bought a house when I was 20,
right, totally different.
Life would be a lot different now.
Yeah. So talk about the book then. Like, when did you start writing the book, and who is this book for?
I'd avoided. So I'm 10. I said I'm 10 years sober now. I'd avoided writing a book for a long time because and I'm glad I did, because I think I've written it at the right time now. And by all these things, I'm a real big believer in nothing happens by accident. I believe the universe puts us in the places we need to be to do the things we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And I was working, doing security work at a hospital, and one of the staff there, we were talking about my history, and I mentioned the name of the treatment centre that I'd been at. And she said, "Oh, my sister works there." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's coincidence." And I said, "Can you pass on my email address to your sister and see if they'll email me? And I'd like to go back and do some work with them." So I got an email from the centre, and they asked me to come and do like a motivational talk to the kids that are there now, to say, like, I've been where you are. This is how bad I was when I was here.
Yeah.
Through what these guys have suggested, I've gone on to have a decent life. I'm doing this stuff now. So I went back to do this talk, and I got real good feedback from the kids that were there. And one of them said, "Have you thought of writing a book?" And I explained why I'd always avoided it. Mostly because I didn't want it to be like an ego exercise. So I've read books from people who have written a book, and it's all just about, look at me, look at what I've done.
Yeah.
How great am I?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be like that. But then that got the idea rattling around in my head again. Should I? Am I supposed to write a book? And then it was like pretty much a year ago now, because it was the dance weekend that I've just been to. It was the same dance weekender last year. I was going for my first ever dance weekender. I was going alone because I was volunteering there to get a free. I was volunteering to work for them, like, to help keep it running. And what they do is they do workshops all day, but they've got certain workshops that are called masterclass workshops, which are a bit more advanced, and you have to pay in advance, but you have to book them as a couple. And I was going on my own. So I just put a message on the Facebook group for the event saying, is any females going to this event? I'd like to do these workshops. Does someone want to book on with me and do a workshop? And I got a message from a lady named Cassie who said, yeah, I'm coming for my first weekender as well. I'm nervous. I'd like to do some workshops. I'll book them with you. So we put the workshops, and she was from Kettering, which is about 240 miles from me, different directions, met up at the weekender, did some workshops together, had a great time. And then it turns out that her business is she's an author coach. And one of her books that she's written is called Share Your World, How to Write a Life-Changing Book in 60 Days. And I just thought, I didn't meet this person by
That's amazing. Back to your point before, you said not random, right?
Someone's put us both on this path to meet for a reason.
Right.
I was talking, I was like, I've had this idea to write a book. What do you think? And I told her about a little bit, brief outline of the story. And she was like, yeah, that sounds like a powerful story. You should definitely write it. So left that weekender, and I started thinking about it. I read her book, which was like teaching me how the process of where to start from. And then in September last year, I just started writing. I was doing some night shifts, and I had loads of free time in the evening where we were quiet. So I bought a new computer and wrote the first draft of the book in about 4 weeks' time, which is quite a fast pace from what I'm told.
Yeah, that is very fast, yeah.
And so then I got in contact with Cassie in the January and said, probably in December, and said, I finished my first draft. What do I do with it now? I sent it off to her. She read it and she was blown away. She said, for a first draft, it was incredible. The structuring of it, the chapters, the points to the chapters, getting that feedback from someone who's works with authors for a living, to say that my work was incredible. And I've never written anything in my life. And all of a sudden in 4 weeks, I've written 45,000 words.
Wow.
So, yeah, and then we went through the next steps, going through the editing process, getting the cover designed and all that. And then, 11 months after meeting this person for the first time, I published my book through her company. Yeah, absolutely. It's been like a whirlwind kind of, it's like a year process now. And I still kind of pinch myself thinking, has that year really happened? Like how did that happen so quickly?
So talk about the response to the book. What are you hearing back from people as they grab a copy? What are they saying back to you as the author?
I've had great feedback from from people who are not addicts. I had a radio host I did an interview for, who read the book, and he said that he doesn't consider himself anyone to have a problem with alcohol. He said, but reading the book, it made him look at other aspects of his life and question his motives for doing certain things and whether or not he was doing things in an addictive way. So he was saying it was like very thought-provoking and very educating for him to have a look at things in his life. And I've had good feedback from people who are struggling too. As I was saying earlier, I did a Q&A on my Facebook group, and one of my old friends that I've known for about 9 years messaged a question in, and I thought he was messaging a question just out of curiosity for the answer. And then after I finished the session, he sent me a private message and said he's just finished reading my book. He's never read a book in his life before. That's the first book he's ever read. And he said that there's a lot of it in there that reminds him of himself. He needs to stop drinking, and he's 3 days sober. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know he had a problem. And he said, yeah, I've been hiding it for a long time, but now I know I need to change. And I said, yeah, I hope it helps. It's never too late to change. And he said, yeah, I know that now. Your book's given me hope that it's not too late for me to change. And to hear feedback like that from someone that I'm close to, that I've known for 9 years, like that's an amazing response to me. That someone can read my book and, like I said earlier, relate to it and diagnose themselves and decide to go on that path. It may not be like an instant fix. He may not stay sober from this day forward, but the seed's been planted. Like I said earlier, it's all about planting the seed, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah, a real. I'm overwhelmed with the response, really, because again, like I suffer badly with like imposter syndrome. Like,
okay, yeah,
the whole process of writing the book, I'm thinking, who's going to want to read my story?
Yeah,
who's going to care what I've got to say? And even up to today, publishing the book, I was still thinking that, no one's going to want to buy this. But I've had a great response so far. Yeah, and I'm totally overwhelmed with it.
I think a lot of people, when they put themselves out there like that, and to share something so personal, that whole thing we wrestle with, like, am I just doing this for myself? Is this going to help anybody? Like, is there value in my words? Like you don't really know, right? But doing that and being humble enough to share your story, even if only maybe one person is impacted, that seems worth it, though, right? One person's life changed.
I think that's the line I put in the book. If this book helps one person, then it's worth the effort. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So, okay, Stewart, when you address your addiction to alcohol, for example, and you feel like you're making progress there, does your addictive nature go away, or does it move to something else? Do you get like addicted to television, or like does the addiction go away, or is it just suppressed? What happens? Does it pop up somewhere else?
So one of the things that they try and teach you in AA is they talk about the character defects. One of their steps in the 12-step program says humbly asking God to remove our shortcomings. So getting rid of those defects of character. Now, I believe that those character defects never go away. There's no way you can get rid of like jealousy forever. You're always going to feel a little bit jealous of something.
Yeah, exactly.
Anger. You're always going to get angry about something, but it's how you react to those things and how you behave. So in that sense, like if addiction is all about behaving in those characteristics, it is never going to go away. I've learned over the years that I can make a mess of my life without a drink or a drug. I can still be, a quote someone said near once was, when I was drinking, I was a drunk arsehole. Take the drink away, now I'm just an arsehole.
Yeah. It just makes whatever you are worse.
So, yes, like for me, addiction isn't so much about the substance. I call them a vice. Yeah. So the vice can be anything. It doesn't have to be a chemical you put in your body. It can be sex, gambling, shopping, working, training,
anything,
food,
shopping, anything.
Whatever fixes how you feel, that you can do that in an addictive way. So because I'm aware of this now, I can still behave like an addict. That's fine. But I choose to get addicted to things that aren't going to hurt me or hurt other people. Okay. So my big thing at the moment is I love trainers. I'm a big Nike Air Max fan. I'm plugging Nike Air Max again because I'm hoping that someone from Nike will hear this and I'll get a sponsorship deal. So Nike CEO, please listen in and hit me up later. I've got about 35 pairs of Nike Air Max. Like, I don't need that many pairs of trainers.
Yeah.
I keep them all in nearly new condition. But I'll explain why it's enjoyable for me. So addiction is about dopamine, getting this feeling in our brains that we like, right?
Yeah.
So I've got 35 pairs of trainers on a rack. I don't need another pair. But an email will come in and it'll say this new pair's out. And I'll look at them and I'll go, cool, they look nice. And I'll be toying with the idea, do I buy them, don't I? Can I justify buying them? They're expensive. And eventually I'll cave in and I'll buy them because I'm feeling a bit lower that day. It's always on a day where I'm feeling a bit lower that I'll go, I'll treat myself. So I'll justify it in my head and I'll buy the trainers. And then I'm excited then because I'll hit that buy button, and then you've got to wait for them to arrive then, haven't you? So I've got the excitement, I've got the dopamine hit in my brain because I've got, these trainers are going to come soon. And then I'll get a notification or an email saying they've been shipped, they're on the way. Ooh, that's another little dopamine hit.
Yeah.
That I'm doing. And then the day that they're due to be arriving, you get a notification from the delivery company saying Jeff from DPD is going to deliver your trainers today at 2:37, and you go, oh, that's another little dopamine hit. I'm loving this.
Yeah.
And the doorbell goes, you're like, oh, the trainers are here. That's another little dopamine hit. And then you get them and you open the box and you go, oh, my trainers are here. And then 5 minutes later, it's just another pair of trainers that go on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had this dopamine hit, multiple amounts of this dopamine hit each time this notification's happened. And I do the same thing again. And I know exactly what's going to happen the next time I do it, but I still do it. But I'm not spending my rent money, so it's okay. I've got lots of trainers, but I didn't not pay my rent to get them. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I haven't hurt me. I haven't hurt my partner. I haven't hurt anyone else. I can use trainers to give me a little dopamine hit.
So that's a good point to bring out. Like your partner then is aware that this is happening and understands kind of the why behind why you have so many pairs of shoes. Like it's kind of like they're not like going, why are you doing this? They kind of have a sense of what's going on.
Yeah, she knows. My partner, she when I'd written the first draft of the book, she said, "Can you send me a copy?" I was still doing the night shift, and she was like, "Can you send me a copy?" Then and I was like, "Oh my god, I don't know if I want to send her a copy."
Right? Yeah.
She's gonna do everything. Damn.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, she knows. Like, and if it was becoming a problem, she would say, if I was spending money that we couldn't afford to spend, she would say, we'd have a conversation about it, and I'd go, okay, I'll try and only buy one pair a month.
Right. Yeah. So the one thing, Stuart, you talked about was self-diagnosis, but is there an accountability thing that you need? You need to be accountable to somebody to hold you to sticking with your recovery or being, that kind of ongoing support. Is that something you need?
Yeah, so initially when I tried to start getting sober, I tried many different processes, like went to doctors, went to therapists. They tried, CBT therapy. That is it the same over?
Yeah.
So yeah, I tried all those different things. None of it really worked because I just kind of bumbled my way through and lied to people and just told them what they wanted to hear or what I thought they wanted to hear. And then the only time that recovery really got serious and I actually truly started believing that I could change was when I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. Because the way that works is basically you're in a room full of people who are just like you, who have been through it as well. They know exactly what you've been through, know exactly what you're going through now. I've done it before. And one of the early things I heard in the rooms was I was going there with all these excuses of, poor me and coming out with sob stories. And the guy looked at me and he said, "I'm sorry, mate, but you've got no excuses anymore." He said, "Look at all of us. We've been where you are. We used to behave like that. Now we don't. You can too." And I was like, "Oh, damn. Yeah, he's got a point."
Yeah.
And their process is you pick someone who you relate to, someone who's maybe similar to you, or someone who's got a level of recovery that you aspire to achieve to as well. And you ask them to sponsor you, and they become your kind of like mentor, I guess. And they show you the process of working through the 12 steps the way they were shown. So it's almost like passing down family secrets down through the years.
Yeah.
And I picked a guy who was similar to me. It was a different vice that he was using, but it was very similar stories. He was a family man. I had kids. He had what when I heard where he'd been to where he'd got to, I was like, I'd like to get to that level as well. And although I don't go to AA anymore for personal reasons, he's still one of my best friends. We've got a group of us who we call it Recovery Lads on tour. There's a group of us that are all sober, and we go on holidays together.
Nice.
We went to Portugal this year. That was a fun experience. You're walking around this foreign country and like all the local restaurants and stuff. They see a group of lads together and they expect us to be this rowdy bunch of lads from the UK.
Yeah.
And we were just totally the
opposite. What's going on? Yeah.
Give us some food.
Yeah.
Give us some food and 6 glasses of water.
So what kind of doors have opened for you now that the book's in the world, Stewart? Like, are you getting out to be able to talk to people, do presentations? Can you talk a little bit of what kind of doors have opened now?
Yeah, one of the most. I mean, obviously, I'm doing podcasts. Quite a place. So there's a podcast. I'm not going to say too much, but there's a very. He's quite a famous person who does a podcast,
nice.
And potentially we'll be going on that one soon. Which, I mean, obviously yours is better.
Of course, yeah. I thought you were talking about me. I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, of course, no, yeah.
There's a lot of podcasts coming up that's going to give some real good exposure. But one of the best things I've done so far that I got invited to do was the treatment centre that I was talking about earlier that I went to before. They contacted me and said they'd been invited to a police and crime commissioner event in Devon. And they wanted someone to go and talk about lived experience. And because I'd just finished writing the book, they thought I'd be in the best position to represent them and do it for them. So I said yeah. I wasn't really too sure what it would involve when I signed up for it. So when I got there, I was very, very nervous. So it was a room full of local government councillors from different areas of Devon to say, we've got a drug problem. What are you doing about it? And they had presentations from the local council about all the programs they're putting in place to help addicts and people from prisons. Then they had the police doing a speech of what they're doing to tackle the drug problems. And then I came up. I was like absolutely petrified.
Remembering that you used to have drugs that you were selling and afraid of the police. Now you're in front of the police presenting. What a change there. Oh my gosh.
I joked, I started the speech and I got to the point where I was like getting towards the drug bit. And I looked over at the police and crime commissioner and I said, do I have some sort of immunity at the moment?
I do have a book. Yeah.
Are you recording this? And she laughed, she said, no, you're free to say whatever you like. And I just kind of gave a bit of a take on my experience through my life, where I've been through and where I've got to, and what I believe needed to be done to try and help the problems. And some of the local councillors turned to people that were there that I knew and said, out of all the speeches, that was the most informative of all. And then after the event, the police and crime commissioner came over and thanked me personally and bought 5 copies of my book so that she could give 4 out as gifts and keep one for herself and wanted it signed. And then also asked me that if I would be interested in coming to help them to give them advice when they're commissioning services to help people with addictions.
Nice.
That's incredible, right?
That is.
A month before that, I'm thinking, who's going to want to read my book?
Right, exactly, yeah.
And then a month later, I'm getting the police and crime commissioner saying that they want to use my knowledge to help them commission services.
See, and had you not been obedient to write the book, none of this would be happening, right?
This is the goal. Like, obviously, like, I'm not in a position where I can give up work. I've got to work full time to pay my bills.
Yeah.
But if it's not about making money. Like, because I got to a point now where I know that money isn't going to buy me happiness. My definition of success is not money based. I would like to be able to get to a point where I've got the financial freedom to be able to not work as much.
Yeah.
So I can dedicate some time to helping people like the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yeah.
And other organisations when they're tackling drug problems and trying to help addicts, because who better to say what's going to work and what's not going to work than someone who's been through it, right?
Right. Yeah. I can read a book about it, or I can talk to somebody who's actually lived it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like at this point, at the Police and Crime Commissioner event, I'm listening to the people that are before me talking about services they're putting in place, and I'm just thinking, some of that's a good idea, some of it might work, but you're going to waste a lot of money on people who are not ready to change yet, because you're trying to go with a one size fits all model, for people to use, and it's never going to work.
Amazing.
And so fingers crossed I can get my feet in under a lot of tables and try and help a lot of people where I can, not just with the book, with doing other work on the side of it. This is, like you say, you live in the next chapter. This is it. I've written the book now. What's the next chapter? There's so much I want to get into, and so much I want to try and help change. This is just the beginning.
Love it. And thank you for using the name of the podcast. That made me happy too. Stewart, okay, so for somebody listening, they're here because of the title of the episode. I give you an example. There's a woman that I just interviewed recently, and she lost her son to addiction. And that was a hard conversation and he was about 25, 26 when she lost him. And that was a tough road. And now she's writing about his story from a mother's perspective. Right. Yeah. So I know she's going to be interested in your conversation in this book, because this is the other side. Right. But for those people that are here because of the title of the podcast episode, Stewart, instead of talking through me to them directly, I'd rather you just talk to them from your perspective.
Yeah.
Where do we start? What do we do? What would you say to somebody who is realizing they need to do something?
Okay.
What do we do?
I was quite daunted at the beginning. I had no idea. When I was in my early stages, I didn't have a desire to change. And I'm not saying this just to promote my book, but I think I think anyone who's on listening to this because of the title, if you're thinking about it, a good place to start would be to read the book, and read it with an open mind. Look for similarities, not differences. And if you think you can relate to a lot of the thoughts and feelings that I had, and you think you might have a problem, then, give recovery a go. What have you got to lose? The pubs and the drug dealers aren't going to go away if you have a little break for 6 months. Give it a little bit of time and just see how different your life can be without having drink and drugs in your life. And if it's not for you, you can always go back to it. But just, if you're thinking about it, just give it a go, because it'll be the best thing you'll ever do.
Excellent. Stewart, where do we find the book, and how do we carry on the conversation with you after we're done your recording today?
Yeah, so I think the book's available on Amazon as paperback or digital on Kindle, and it's also available on Apple Books. And over here is available on major bookstore websites like Waterstones. I don't know if you've got that over in your country, or any listeners anywhere else. And if you want to keep up to date with me and what I'm doing, I have my own website, which is stewartleeauthor.co.uk. Stewart is spelled Stewart. So I like to be different, as always. There's links on the website that you can get through to my Facebook page. But if you look on Facebook and just search up for the group Me and My Addiction by Stewart Lee, that's my Facebook group. I'm always quite active on there. And my Instagram as well is Stewart_Lee_author.
Great. Talk a little bit about the group too. Like, what do we find when we go to the Facebook group?
I do updates all the time of what I'm up to. I often go live and just have a chat with everyone about what I've been up to, what I've been doing, what I've got coming up in the future. I do occasional question and answer events. So if I'll put an event up and say, if anyone's got a question, ask me anything.
Yeah.
Get a lot of questions in, and I'll just go live and just answer all the questions for people. And then people will add more questions whilst I'm on the live session. And it's just that, it's a good addition to the book, people, because I don't know what people are going to want to know. So I've written what I think is going to help people, and people might read it and then have more questions. So I do the question and answer session so people can ask other questions. Like someone asked me, what do I think about people drinking non-alcoholic drinks, alcohol-free lagers, alcohol-free ciders when they're in recovery? It's not something I touched on in the book. That's what I want to know. So,
nice.
Good opportunity to get more answers to your questions if you have them.
So when does the podcast start for you?
For me,
yeah, your own. Because Me and My Addiction would be a great podcast name. Just saying.
Yeah, it's definitely something it's something I've definitely thought of doing. I'm going to try and get myself. My plan for this week. I've got a week off work. I booked annual leave, and my plan is to clear my garage out for a start, so that I can make space for my desk and office equipment, and then hopefully I can maybe set it out so I've got some sort of like recording capability in there, because I'm hoping to make the book into an audio book.
Perfect.
I've done it myself where I've wanted to read a certain book or listen to a certain book. I've gone onto the bookstore, looked for it. It's not on an audio book, so I've decided not to get it. And I think, for whatever for me, it's just because I'm lazy. I'd rather have someone read it to me. Pay a little bit more. So I might be missing out on a big chunk of people that I can reach out to by not having audio books. So I'm going to try and get that done first. And then who knows, podcast after. And I can have you as a guest.
Hey, I would love to listen too, just so you know. I'd love to be part of that. And I think your community really enjoys interacting with you already. So that's just one more way. And there's a chance maybe to sell more books through the podcast, but also maybe to help more people as well. That's the bigger thing, right?
The thought I've had when I thought about doing the podcast, the reason behind it is because I'd like to get guests on who have been through other addictions that I don't personally relate to. So I've got a friend who had a gambling problem, and he was gambling and borrowing money to gamble.
Wow.
And his wife didn't know about it, and he'd racked up £50,000 of debt. And like, I'd love to interview him about his take on gambling, because I never got into gambling. So for me, it's a form of addiction that I don't truly understand. So it'd be nice to interview other people with different takes on addiction so my readers can get a good understanding of addiction to drink and drugs, but nothing else, So addiction is a very wide spectrum of the disease, I think. So it'd be nice to get people on with different takes of it.
Well, hey, I think you have something amazing, Stewart. So between the book and your community on Facebook and all the things you got going on, thank you for doing this. Thank you for writing this book, even though you maybe at the beginning were thinking, what could this ever lead to? You're seeing the fruits of it, which is amazing. Just keep following that path, and help more people every day. There's something good. Something good is coming beyond what you've already seen. Something good is coming for you. So just be ready for it.
That means a lot. Thank you for giving me the time to come on and talk about it.
Amazing. And this big podcast that's coming in the future, possibly, I'm curious about that, and looking forward to finding what that's about as well. So
you tell me when you're publishing it, Dave.
There you go. Awesome. I love it. Thank you, Stewart, for being part of the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Keep going. Don't stop. Okay. Awesome. chapter. Really appreciate you being here and being part of our podcast community. LivingTheNextChapter.com is our website. I have an offer for you as an author, if you're listening, and you're wanting to build your website for your book. I've had so many authors come on and they're struggling in this area. I'd love to help you. All of the websites that I built for my different podcasts, I have experience and I'd love to help you and get you up and running. I can help you with your domain purchase. I can help you with setting up your podcast, making it really simple. And if you love Canva, we can even set it up on Canva for you and you can do all your own maintenance. You don't need to hire anybody. We'll help you get set up. So if that interests you as an author and you want a website for your book, let me know. We can do this. I can help you. LivingTheNextChapter.com is the website for the podcast. You can find me there. I'd love to help you. Reach out. Let me know if I can be of assistance in any way. And thank you again for listening to Living the Next Chapter. Today is where your book begins. Thanks for listening.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.